Hello and welcome back to Meet Mozart. I'm Angie, that's Mozart, and today we're going to continue our exploration of the character of Ophelia from Shakespeare's Hamlet. And if you don't remember the plot of Hamlet, you've never seen the play, never read it, that's totally cool. Just hop on back to part one, we'll get you all caught up to speed. But for now, we're going to go ahead and dive into Ophelia. So why is it that Ophelia is a character that's gotten so much attention in the art song world? Well, first of all, as we mentioned in part one, she's a character that is surrounded by a lot of intrigue. We have a lot more questions about her than we have real answers. Secondly, she's a character who sings. In her madness, which we'll talk more about in part 4 of this series, Ophelia sings snippets of old tunes. And these aren't just songs that an actor would have made up on the spot or improvised on the stage. They're songs that would have been very, very well known to the Shakespearean audience. And Shakespeare would have used those songs in order to convey an idea. So for example, if you were doing a very modern take on Hamlet, you could have Ophelia sing something like, "Remember to always think twice," from Michael Jackson's Billie Jean. And if we as an audience know the context of the rest of that song, we might start to interpret things about Ophelia's state or perhaps even her relationship with Hamlet. And so by using the music, Shakespeare could convey a lot of ideas that he couldn't just outright say because they were against the rules of the theater at the time. And so by presenting these songs, he was able to give the audience a fuller picture of a character such as Ophelia. No one knows definitively what the songs that Ophelia sang during Shakespeare's time might have sounded like. First of all, because we've lost some of the printed music that existed, but also because in Shakespeare's time, music was primarily printed in two different forms. The first was the actual musical notation, which was given to a lute player or instrumentalist. The second was what they called a broadsheet. And that's what would go to the singer or to anyone in the public, and it only had the text written on it. And on top of it, they would sometimes take a text and then right across the top, sing the text to Greensleeves or whatever other song was very popular at the time. So on top of that, we've got this extra layer of people were using and cycling through these songs all the time. And so experts and researchers have had to go off of a lot of various clues, such as the syllabification, looking at different versions that were available through the instrumentalist copies, and also just taking a look at what generally was a popular song at the time and sort of puzzle piecing those parts back together. Ophelia sings or references about 5 different songs in her madness. And the first of those, which she sings solely to Gertrude, is "How Shall I Your True Love Know?" or Walsingham, as the audience at the time might have known it. Ophelia quotes only 2 lines from that song. But if we get to know the entire song, we can understand it that it's actually a conversation between 2 people. The first is a lover who's been abandoned, and the second is a pilgrim, which in Ophelia's version she refers to by his cockle hat and sandal shoon. In the full context, this is a conversation wherein the lover asks the pilgrim, "Have you seen my true love?" And the pilgrim asks, "How should I, your true love, know?" Right? There's so many people who go on pilgrimages. How would I identify her? And then the lover goes on to talk about her and about how she's left him because he's gotten old. And the two refer to love as a fickle and careless child, and yet it ends with an expression of fidelity from the lover. So considering the song in its full context, Ophelia could be talking about Hamlet, who's now deserted her. She could be talking about Polonius, because she changes a lot of the words in the song to be about a burial. Or, because Gertrude is the only other significant character on stage, she could be referring to Gertrude and her fickleness in so quickly remarrying Claudius after her husband's death. But whatever her indications might have been, it is possible that the song sounded something like this.
How shall I your true love know from another one? By his cockle hat and staff, and his sandal shoon, white is shroud as mountain snow, lighted with sweet flowers, which bewept to the grave did not go with true love shows. He is dead and gone, lady, he is dead and gone. At his head a grass-green turf, at his heels a stone.
After finishing her version of Walsingham, King Claudius enters, and Ophelia says to him, "They say the owl was a baker's daughter." Now, to anyone hearing that, that sounds like a really nonsensical sentence. And in fact, a lot of Shakespearean experts have spent a lot of time trying to figure out what exactly Ophelia might have meant. And there's even a theory that perhaps there was an old folk story in which a baker's daughter refused to give Jesus bread and then he turned her into an owl. And while that's possible, it certainly doesn't seem very Jesus-like. On the other hand, there are experts such as Ross Duffin, again referencing his book Shakespeare's Songbook, that believe that she was actually mixing up the reference of two different songs. One of those songs would have been a jig about an owl, and the other is called the wooing, or in Ophelia's mind, the hooing, of the baker's daughter. And in that song, we hear the story of a baker's daughter who's very beautiful, and all kinds of different men are trying to woo her and get them to marry her, and she refuses them all until a miller comes along and he woos her by dancing a jig. And so, again, in this case, it's possible that she's referring to Hamlet who wooed her, or because she's actually saying it to Claudius, and because the song actually has a happy ending, she could be inferring that Claudius wooed Gertrude. Her next song is perhaps the best argument for anyone who thinks that Hamlet and Ophelia shared a physical relationship. And that song is "Tomorrow is St. Valentine's Day," and it talks about a man who has promised to marry a woman, but then they become intimate and he backs out.
Tomorrow is St. Valentine's Day, early in the morning betime, and I am made at your window to be thy Valentine. Then up he rose and donned his clothes, and opened the chamber door. Let in a maid that out a maid never departed more. By Jesus and by Saint Charity, alack and sigh for shame. Young men will do it if they come to it. By cock they are to blame. Quoth she, before you tumbled me, you promised me to wed. So would I had done by yonder sun, and thou hadst not come to my bed.
Ophelia's next song, "Bonny Sweet Robin," or "Robin Has to the Greenwood Gone," which she sings before Claudius, Gertrude, and her brother Laertes, comes from the perspective of a woman who has been left by her lover, Robin, and has decided that she will never love anyone else again. True to form, though, Ophelia changes the first 3 lines of the song to be about burial. She then interrupts herself to pass out flowers, which we'll talk about more in part 4, and then finishes the song with the last line, "For bonny sweet Robin is all my joy." So it's possible in this song that she's either referring to Hamlet having left her, or her father's burial, or a little bit of both.
They bore him barefaced on the bier, and in his grave rained many a tear. Fare you, my dove, my boy, for bonny sweet Robin is all my joy.
We don't have the full original text of Ophelia's final song, "And Will He Not Come Again?" but based on the syllabification as well as different instrumental sources, Shakespearean expert Ross Duffin believes it may have sounded like this.
And will he not come again? And will he not come again? No, no, he is dead. Go to thy deathbed. He never will come again. His beard was as white as snow, of flaxen was his poll. He is gone, and we cast away mourn. God have mercy on his soul.
Knowledge of the original sources of Ophelia's songs is a relatively new idea for modern listeners. But luckily for us, we have wonderful composers such as England's Elizabethan Maconchy, who have been giving Ophelia a voice for hundreds of years. Maconchy's Ophelia's song was written in 1926, when she herself was only 19 years old and studying at the Royal College of Music. And I'm very excited to get to share this setting of one of Ophelia's songs, because I think it's interesting to get the perspective of someone who was from that part of the world and who was roughly the same age as Ophelia would have been. And I think that Maconchy conveys the tenderness and vulnerability of that age through the music in such a special way. She really approaches it with extreme gentleness, and there's a sparseness in the piano that creates a really hauntingly beautiful atmosphere.
Yes.
Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you learned something. I know I did. And once again, I have to thank the wonderful Melinda Hall for her help, for guiding me in a direction, for introducing me to Ross Duffin's work. And she's actually going to be joining us for our next video, in which we're going to be talking about Gertrude through Saint-Saëns' La Mort d'Ophélie, which is a French translation of Gertrude's account of Ophelia's death. Thank you also to Jason Worth for lending us his amazing pianistic skills. He'll be joining us for the rest of this series. And once again, thank you all for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, push all the fun buttons, including that little notification bell, and we'll see you next week.